Hello, everyone. Spirit World X, how's everyone doing? It's good to, of course, know everybody's still with me. We have a lot of stuff that we need to talk about. We have a lot of very, 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 very interesting, very perplexing stuff we have to talk about. I'm going to turn this down so that I can have an opportunity to speak to you folks. I just wanted you to get a good feel of what's going on right now. Get a good feel of the situation that we're both in. You and me. That would be the black man and the black woman, the melanated people of the earth. And what we need to do, of course, in this very, very trying time. And the best way to get out of this situation we're in is to know how we got into it. And what I'd like you to know is that we, some few 100,000 years ago, we've already established that we are immortal spirits. This is a spiritual experiment, spiritual reality. We're just having a chemical experience in it. All right? Now listen, folks. We, some few 100,000 years ago, we disconnected our electromagnetic selves from our highest side, which is, of course, what you and I have learned to call outer space. Now, when we creator, Adam and Eve, the high, omniscient, omnipotent, and having the capacity for the awareness capacity to extrapolate and manipulate the chemical realm, when and who is transgenerational, meaning we reincarnate, we're omnipotent and omniscient, meaning we're everywhere psychically, mentally, at the same time. We are everything and everything is us. Well, when we decided to disconnect from our high three-divisional electrochemical trinity, that means we created a story that disconnected us from the heavens. For instance, God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit. This is not the true Trinity. The true Trinity, I've explained to you already what it was, and we'll get deeper into that soon. But we began then in our matrix, in our Immortal Life Support Creation Matrix program, the magnetic manifestation of fail-safe protocol rebalancing conscious controls existing in all bloodlines that presently control all governments in our world. At this time, our sun began pulsing flares at the time of our magnetic misalignment, which means we're immortal beings who are attempting to be physical. And we, of course, when we come into a physical body, an avatar, we become enamored with our identity. And this is an artificial identity you're enamored with in the mirror. So what happens is you magnetically misalign your frequency from the other order all of these sequentially ordered, pre-programmed frequencies throughout the food chain and the planet. Now, of course, we will get further into this later, but let's look at cosmic disaster. Now, this cosmic disaster that you're looking at is, of course, going to be caused by the next, you see that? The Adam and Eve story. Well, this is CIA classified information in regards to Adam and Eve, the melanated men and women, and their misaligned frequency. South Africa, Kenya. So at this point, they are discussing exactly how many continents are going to be disrupted with the next solar flare, which is created by none other than your magnetically misaligned mind here in our own Matrix program. Folks, please believe this is the truth in regards to your reality. And it's going to get deep. I know it's already deep, but it's about to get deeper after this clip. So,
with only a few handfuls of survivors.
By the way,
its vastness.
you didn't miss much because they're going to rediscuss everything that you've missed here in a moment or two.
Once more, the Earth has shifted its shell, with the poles moving almost to the equator in a fraction of a day. Again, the atmosphere.
This is the Adam and Eve story. This is the show Cosmic Disaster, CIA Classified. The Adam and Eve story, Chapter 1, CIA Classified 1963, I think that was.
So that paints a pretty terrible picture. If not for the fact that it was classified by the CIA, it might be worth ignoring entirely as science fiction. And indeed, that version is too extreme. But the evidence does suggest a slightly lesser version of that same event does indeed occur during these upheavals. Now, it is our job to show you the evidence from start to finish, and these are the points we will need to hit to do so.
CIA cover-up,
we will have to begin
galactic sheet,
with a manner in
which is
this entire topic
sun's magnetic, positive and negative
in geophysics to total pseudoscience. It was one of the greatest cover-ups in
magnetic
history.
flares, super flare, or micronova.
At the sun. We'll see how
of course, that would have everything to do with your mind, brothers and sisters.
The Adam and Eve story,
pole reversal. You are presently sustaining and creating with your magnetically misaligned mind.
From the sequence of events in the
impactors and surviving. You are impacting this active activity on the Earth, and of course, cars and CO2, anything that's emitting CO2 emissions. So, you and I are now faced with the next catastrophe.
To the public that the science of catastrophism could once again progress. And that story begins with a cover-up that really began with the predecessor organization to the CIA.
Enjoy the show.
Office of Strategic Services. The initial question is, why was this version of the book classified? What makes this version of the story unique? Well, certainly this version of the story is quite extreme. A one-day shift of geologic proportion that sends the sea from its beds and tears the world apart. The most critical aspect of the work is the fact that it highlights a repeating, cyclical nature to the event on Earth. Then again, nearly everyone who studied the catastrophe over the last 300 years came to that same conclusion. In the 1940s, one of the most critical scenes of this theater played out at the North Pole. Major Maynard E. White led the first mission to map and understand the Arctic region, mostly because of navigational concerns and to monitor for Soviet attacks over the pole. When it became imperative to locate the magnetic pole position, the scientists found much more than they bargained for when they got their boots on the ground. They found evidence of marine strata, lifted to significant altitude, time after time, and with tropical corals found in that Arctic region strata, complementing the evidence of similar fossils found by Admiral Byrd in Antarctica, both complementing the prehistoric trees unearthed in Norway, which had no rings, indicating that they resided at the equator. All in all, Major White's team believed that they had...
What these individuals are doing is trying to figure out when our catastrophe is going to happen. Now, they already understand that your magnetically misaligned mind is not going to change unless you absorb the information you're hearing now. So they're trying to, based upon the reality they feel that you're going to remain magnetically misaligned, they are trying to attempt to figure out how our planet is acting and when they can, of course, when they can predict the next catastrophes based upon the flare activity of the past, which was also created by your immortal electromagnetic conscious radio frequency being magnetically misaligned.
Advocates of this 10 to 12,000 year cycle of disaster on Earth, especially when you consider what they did next.
Every few 10,000 years, a new bloodline, 5 sensory aware, has been released out of our genetics, out of the melanated genetics. Well, of course, I have
With the famous Earth's crust
several different bloodlines. Mine, of course, would be indigenous, native, North African, and of course, I'm pretty sure that would be German.
Easily debunked by modern geophysicists, taking down the entire science of catastrophism with it. That is the famous version with the foreword written by Albert Einstein.
But in the end, we are one, unseen, unmoving,
years before he died. However, Einstein
high and low, vibrationally aware being, radio frequency,
after he died. There is no way of knowing if Einstein
spectrum,
supported the radically different
electrochemical spectrum, or electromagnetic spectrum.
What we do know is that Einstein saw the cycle of catastrophe and the turning.
You got to forgive the way I'm speaking. I'm bending over to talk to you, so forgive me.
In the years before he died, and we know he never did find a sufficient geophysical mechanism. Hapgood's version.
Your mind is the geophysical mechanism, and this is why they classified all of this information.
It does not match the geological evidence.
And every one of your bloodlines,
Hapgood's version.
every bloodline that exists,
now,
of course, also carries high vibrational awareness.
And the only contribution
the classification of all this information, as far as you're concerned, my fellow brother and sisters existing in the root race bloodlines, is
matches the version that somehow
they don't want you to become conscious throughout these different sun flares, or throughout the years that exist between these sun flares, which are caused by the African man and woman's magnetic misalignment. They want you to continue gaining greater unconsciousness. As the years go by, every 10 years, the African man and African woman emit a pulse of energy that amplifies the conscious radio, 5 sensory aware radio frequency, conscious control, rebalancing figures in our world's governments. And of course, they set out to continue on their pre-programmed mission to create enough pressure to wake us up to realize that the direction of materialism that we're going in to define ourselves can't define us. They will continue to do what they're doing. Until we realize these things can't define us, they will continue to destroy this planet, which is you.
The postlude describes the only
in totality. You are the planet.
In recent years, the movement
you can't exist without it, and it can't exist without you. As you can see, you're literally destroying everything with your magnetic misalignment.
But one of the lesser publicized realizations of this fact is the scaled similarity with the solar system and with Earth's equatorial ion emission. You see, just like the solar system, the galaxy has an electromagnetic current sheet rippling around the equator, separating the coherent fields of north and south. Now, in our solar system, the sheet ripples, wavering around the equator, bringing a spike in ion density and a reversal of the interplanetary magnetic fields. At Earth, although our orbit only crosses the exact solar equator twice per year, the solar electric current sheet hits Earth every 2 weeks and can produce a geomagnetic storm, inducing electric currents in the atmosphere and the ground. Earth is constantly protected by its own magnetic field, but in addition to things like solar flares, simply enduring a every 2 week solar system magnetic reversal and current sheet impact can cause those electromagnetic disruptions. So, what happens when the Sun and solar system encounter the galactic version, its spike in density, and its magnetic reversal process? Let's actually add one more element to that puzzle, the dust. In our own solar system, and most we see, there is a dusty plain, like Saturn's rings. Density is low from planet formation over time, but in the galaxy that is not the case. There are dusty remnants of countless nova and material left over from the star formation events of the galaxy. So the galactic sheet is more ion dense, a galactic magnetic reversal, and a much more dusty region than we find in our own solar system. Now, out of those three, it might seem like the galactic magnetic field reversal and the extra ion and electron density are the scarier propositions than the dust. But in fact, it might be the dust that makes the situation so awful. To understand why, we must investigate a phenomenon known as recurrent nova. There are quite a number of these recurrent nova that we do know of. Here's an interesting picture of one called T-Pix. And by the way, this first image was the T-Pix nova of 1997, and this was the T-Pix nova of 2011. It just goes boom over and over and over again. Beautiful plasma physics swinging into view with how they're pretty sure the eruptive character is when it comes to at least this one recurrent nova. And so what this is here, and this list will be ever expanding, these are the current recurring nova in the Milky Way, with the exception of the one that was just discovered about a week and a half ago, that was in the Large Magellanic Cloud. I don't know if they're going to count that one as being in the Milky Way or not. But take a look over. It's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th column where it has a bunch of years. Those are the known outburst years. Just take a look at how many times these ones have actually gone boom, some of them. All of the lectures that students are hearing right now, and some of the best literature reviews on this topic that you can find, very much conclude one thing on this list. It is egregiously under-inclusive. They say that our viewing of the heavens at this level is so nascent that there are almost certainly supernova that we have seen that aren't supernova, that we will see them go boom again, and they will make this list. They believe that there are many with hundreds to thousands of year cycles that we simply have not seen go boom even once. And when we do, we'll have no idea it's a recurrent nova for hundreds to thousands of years more. And so, come to ask what the trigger mechanism is. And it is currently thought to be close-in binaries that is feeding material down onto one of the other stars. And
now these binaries, of course, they exist within our highest mind as chemical compositions that help to sustain our planet's immortal existence, our matrix program's immortal electromagnetic processes. However, the greatest triggers are, ladies and gentlemen, your magnetically misaligned mind. That's the greatest trigger in our problem at this moment. We are out of the natural alignment with our natural order of conscious potential. I'll explain all this in the next clip. Please enjoy the rest of the show.
Except with the current sheet, we also have a surplus of electromagnetic particles as well, all during a galactic magnetic field reversal. The proposal for what that could mean for a sun that is known to have the ability to produce rare superflare type outbursts already is something close to the stories of our ancestors insisting the sun has a dark side. Why did this all kick off when they came back from the moon?
They're saying your sun has a dark side, ladies and gentlemen,
90%
when in all actuality,
of the glass
it is you and I
who
have the dark side.
Impact or from volcanism on the moon.
You and I have the
There's
dark
unquestionably
side.
These
Because we
classes
are
of glasses
the
that
sun
are not from
standing in a
volcanoes and
physical
that are
body.
not from meteorite impacts, specifically the ones that have aluminum-26. The relative
Like we are in the center of this body, controlling it. We are the center of the sun.
to hit the moon big enough such that
We
we would no
affect
longer
every
have
condition
the moon.
here in this matrix program with the electromagnetic potential of our mind.
But at one time, there was
No differently than the sun.
solar outburst from the sun, maybe 100,000 times what it is right now. Tommy Gold was one of the first to suggest this hypothesis. And
I do understand the rabbit hole has gotten deep.
So,
In the next clip, I welcome you to go even deeper.
In the past,
Because
ago, there was
in that
an
clip,
intense
ladies and
solar
gentlemen,
outburst. And so I'm
You're going to get every one of your dots connected, and I love every one of you, so stay with me, please.
So-called,
It's going to be rocky.
biblical flood, if you will. On average, about every 10,000 years, you can expect a a catastrophe to happen. For the most part, the civilization is wiped out, and that's it's a horrendous catastrophe. It wipes out a pre-existing civilization and most of the people on Earth.
What audacity do these individuals have to speak as if they have so much
Through decades of searching
sincere
the world for
compassion
amazing observers like John
when they are literally
Grant has amassed the most
making sure that it does take place?
Representation of global solar storms, and the most famous of those is the Stickman.
And our inaction is not helping the situation.
Around the world from the exact same time period.
And this is where I come in with your warning. Please enjoy the show.
Called a Z-pinch seems to fit the description of both the drawings and the physics of a solar disaster.
There's two events happening here. When the sun novas, the heat from that nova and also cosmic rays, we get within 8 minutes of when the sun novas. Now, for another 17 to 18 hours, that dust shell is still on the way. It hasn't hit until an estimate 17 to 18 hours after the nova. So the first thing happens is the surface is going to get melted and glazed. Ironically, the Taurus winds up saying the moon turned red. Well, yeah, it turned red. It just got baked and melted. That's the glazing that Thomas Gold and others had noticed all around the place. Then the dust shell hits 17, 18 hours later. Several assumptions. One, you can't assume that this dust shell is homogeneous. Because the evidence we've seen both on the Earth and on the Moon, they have the different samples that go back from Apollo.
Folks, I'll let you know now, these individuals are attempting to figure out how hot it will be on the Earth and what type of materials they're going to have to use to protect themselves from the next sun flare, which is going to create the next disaster, climate disaster, and ice age. I mean, huge climate disaster. Hopefully you and I aren't going to see that, but these individuals have to be contained. Now, these individuals, they're attempting to prepare to go to the dark side of the moon. Of course, you remember Ozzy Osbourne and the Dark Side of the Moon album. Well, that's, ladies and gentlemen, and the biting of the bat with the vampire teeth. Ladies and gentlemen, I am telling you the truth on your reality. The vampires are attempting to destroy this planet, which, of course, is a total extension of you physically and right out of your mind. And for the fact that it comes right out of your mind, and believe me, it does, okay? These individuals are attempting to go to the moon afterwards, the dark side of the moon, and then die off.
A bunch of them that could only have been formed from a stellar nova. You have that relativistic temperatures.
I don't know what this is, John here at me, Houston, but I'm going to pick it up because, I think I said that to you, but I think it's a glass, but in this sunlight, it's reflecting.
Now, what they're looking at are
like a rainbow.
crystallized debris asteroid debris that was found on Mars or on the moon, and they're picking it up to see, of course, if it's what type of material it is. Did it come from our Matrix program, or is it from outer space? What they've called outer space. They want to find out how much it took to melt that piece of material. How far away from the sun was this material? All for what, folks? Just so that you and I, billions and billions of dollars every year in this exploration to find out exactly when they should go and what they're going to have to have with them to protect themselves from all the heat. All of you people starving, all of you people lost, unconscious, who are not aware of what's really going on. You now are getting
picking up
a
on the moon.
great picture of what's
They
happening.
were looking for glass bladders. They were looking for evidence of solar effects on the moon. And I think that the Chinese went up there on the far side of the moon to do exactly the same thing.
And we already know the Chinese are 5 sensory aware, fail-safe protocol rebalancing conscious controls no differently than our European Brotherhood. Our dark side European Brotherhood. And of course, they're all in collusion with the dark side of our African brother and sisterhood.
These are interesting because they had a glazed surface on top, the 64455 sample. There was this glazed top on it, and then in another part of that sample, there were all these pellet shots in it. I think it's a very, very strong evidence path that our sun has a micronova event at a very regular period of time, and that we're seeing these samples on the moon as evidence of these events.
Ladies and gentlemen, please don't believe that this information was classified because they didn't want you to be afraid. Ladies and gentlemen, your government certainly, and my government works very, very vigorously to make sure you're uncomfortable all the time. So please don't believe they didn't keep this classified for that purpose of not seeing you uncomfortable.
Rapids, 56 concentric. Actually, it's less than that because these have started to undergo rotation. Here's one on the Navajo Reservation, Bronze Shield, 3rd millennium, Middle East. This is a 56 ray from Kazakhstan. Somebody locked the doors because at this point people are going to start escaping, but this is a 56 ray circle axis mundi from China, and these are actually drawn as paintbrushes. Yeah, the axis mundi. Here, the tree coming up in the center, right? The 56 are there. In Arizona, says the same thing. Pick that one up. This is unfair. I think the Penumbra dense plasma focus, which also has 56, but it's a plasma, so we would expect it.
It's not what they taught you in school because they gave you it nice and coded. But again, remember, the people in the U.S. government who saw the sun flare up and get the information back from the moon when we brought the stuff back, they were mostly scared. The sun does something terrible. They didn't know when. They felt they had no power to change it. See, our tools have shown us things that they couldn't have possibly seen 50 and 70 years ago.
Dome ceiling, Fifth Street Church, Seattle. This is very close to the.
Now, of course, this
ceiling picture. These ceiling pictures
is a mural of the sun in a church. And of course, Adam and Eve, the melanated people. Now, of course, that's in Saudi Arabia. Of course, we have the Arabs, we have the Asians, we have the Indians, we have the Europeans, who are the fail-safe protocol bloodlines. Each one of them have representations of sun flares. And of course, you go back to Egypt, you also have the same thing. Ladies and gentlemen,
And so,
please believe that
Bradley Schaefer,
this is your
Anthony
truth.
Peratt, Robert Schock, August Dunning, Douglas
And please focus and watch this by yourselves, by the way, afterwards, so that you have an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to get the full scope. It's a very awesome picture.
The sun can go. The voices from the past supporting this argument come from the Maya, the Aztec, stories in India, China, pagan stories, Aboriginal, African, Polynesian, and those in the Middle East, many of which are recorded in the Bible. During that time, the tunnels were built. During that time, the petroglyphs were carved that blame the sun. Some of the stories actually survived from the pagans of Ragnarok. And this is something that I don't think anyone who studies the sun on long-term scales should really ignore if we're looking to answer the question of what can the sun do to the earth, because it's one thing to look back at our ancestors and the stories they tell and say,
Here comes the sun.
you know what? You guys did a pretty good job inventing geometry,
African man and woman, it is time for you to stand
But
up
we're gonna just take your
and
most
defend
important
your
stories
body, which
and
is
just
this
gonna
planet.
Pretend that you guys are crazy and made them up.
European, Asian,
That's one giant
Indian,
leap, especially
Arab,
when they could predict
brothers and
eclipses.
sisters who rely on the sun
Somebody wants
and
to
depend
build a
upon the
lander that's
sun
gonna go on
and
to
align
Mars,
with the
or it's
sun,
gonna go on to Mars.
who would
They have to
like
get
to exist on
realistic
this side of the
as
moon.
possible, right? One of the places they get
It is
this
now
is
time
Edgewood,
to align
Central Florida. We got
and
a bunch
stand
here,
up
so if we
against
have a
this
bunch here, but
unconscious force
you guys remember, we've got a plasma lab, don't we?
that has
Down in Georgia.
permeated
The very first time
our
they
lives
simulated what this solar flash
with
would do
dysfunction.
to the moon, to the lunar soil, was absolutely incredible. And then he blasted it. This is the equivalent black glass that they found on the moon. The glazing of some of the rocks that are in there is the exact glazing that was found on the moon. This required no meteoritic impact. It simply required the equivalent of a massive CME or nova shell discharge, or even what is possible through X-rays going through the vacuum. What you got on the left there is a piece of muscovite mica. This is taken here on Earth. It is only the third ever found rare cosmological event, they say. All of the black stuff around there, those are normal fission tracks. That's real cosmic rays. That's what cosmic rays look like when they hit. But there's this exclusion zone around what they call the rare cosmological event. They know for a fact that it's not electrons or positrons, and they represent a residually input positive charge that didn't discharge outward, but it discharged from the center. And it looks exactly like the cosmic jet that blasts out of a star when it's born. It looks like the cosmic jets that you see from the center of a galaxy when it eats a star. And so how do you get a residual positive charge to basically bathe a crystal such that it takes it in and it can't discharge it out? It's still bathed in the stuff. It has to discharge in the center. There's actually missing atoms in the center. Now, they're not really missing. And I would argue that, while not definitive, something tremendous from the sun is not a terrible first hypothesis. The galactic trigger, the dust and gas mechanism for superflares and recurrent nova, the evidence on the moon, the stories of our ancestors, the global nature of the disaster, all point to the sun as the destroyer.
Coming
Is it a
up,
superflare
folks,
or a micronova? And does it really matter?
everything you
To
need
look at
to
this
know
question,
on how
we
to
will first
fight
investigate
this
the recent
terror.
history of magnetic events on
I
Earth,
thank you very
starting
much
with the
for
one
joining
ongoing
me,
path. The key
and
element in
I
this
hope that
overall
you
process
folks
is one
realize
has
that
already begun to unfold.
I am
Here,
the Mahdi, I am the guided one, in other words, and I will not let you down.
Earth's magnetic field has
I know
become
everything.
acceleration beyond its normal
I just
wonder.
ask that you
And
join me
coincident
in
with
my
that is
knowing,
the loss of field
so
strength.
that we
Magnetic reversals as rapid as 80
can-
years have been recorded in the paleomagnetic
so that we can
record, and we are already more than double that many years into
not have to
Earth's
see
shift.
this magnetic
While
reversal.
moving more slowly than the
It
record
doesn't
fast
have to
reversals,
exist.
Things have begun
It's something
to
that you
intensify.
and I
The
have
Earth's
total
magnetic
control
field is
over.